Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Neptune and Chameleon.
I'm Lyssa Lizards.
And we're your reptile girlies. Okay, so exciting news for the podcast.
Very exciting.
Because I've had a new chameleon for like a month and a half now.
Mm-hmm. And he's a cutie.
And I'm undecided, which is why I've been hesitant to share on the podcast, because I kind of wanted to make a decision prior to, but I have a feeling if I announce it on the podcast, then I'll just get overwhelmed with comments.
For sure.
Saying to keep him. And so what happened was I now have a foster veil chameleon. Yeah. Which is not my first foster.
Yeah, you've had others.
Yeah, if you remember, there were socks that we got through, that was through like a rescue situation, like a true like reptile rescue. This chameleon, which I think I'm leaning towards the name Comet.
So freaking cute.
Which I think is cute and very on brand, which just tells you. Socks did not fit the theme.
No,
I also didn't
not.
pick it. But Comet fits the theme, which is like, okay, if I keep him, you know, we'll see. But the previous owners had named him Butters.
Oh, that's cute too, though.
I didn't like it.
I feel like is that a Family Guy reference?
Oh, I have no idea.
I think that...
I don't think I've seen a full Family Guy episode.
I definitely have not either, but my husband has watched it from time to time, and I'm pretty... It's either Family Guy or like Bob's Burgers. It's like one of those animated adult...
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't watch those.
There's definitely... Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure that there's a Butters.
Someone's just going to comment, you're wrong.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Just let me know, because I don't know.
Leave it at that. So... Anyways, I did not get this one through a rescue. It's actually through my mom.
Which is so funny. And I love that it came through your mom. That's so special.
And it's someone my mom knows who had this chameleon. And then, of course, like, my mom found out they have a chameleon. I was like, oh, my daughter. Yeah. And my mom watches all my videos, too. She knows, like, a lot about chameleons.
Yeah, she does.
So she's like, what's your UVB bulb? What are your supplements? Da, 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 da. And I offer to, like, help them out. I was like, send me some pictures. Like, I'll point you in the right direction of some videos, whatever. And so I did that. And then, like, another week or two go by, and my mom sees a Facebook post from that person of being like, does anyone want a veil chameleon? And she sends me a screenshot, and I go, what? So they had decided that a veil chameleon was not the right pet for them.
Which... I get that. I mean, honestly, like we've talked about this before, if it's not the right pet for you and you realize that after the fact, please rehome. If it's going to be better off elsewhere, please do the right thing.
They wanted a pet that was more interactive and hands-on, and they have a bearded dragon and seems to be fine with like handling and stuff, and this veil chameleon just like was not. Yeah. So I offered to take it in, at least to foster, and I was like, best case scenario, like I'll find them a home. Otherwise, like, I really didn't have any intention of keeping him.
No, you didn't at all, which is why I was shocked when you indicated that maybe...
So he's a sub-adult, just under a year, based off of like how long they had him and like age estimate. I would say he's probably like 10, 11 months old, like just under a year. And he's so friendly. For a chameleon that got rehomed for like not being but you have to have expectations, right? And like as far as chameleons go, like this is a very friendly one. And don't get me wrong, he does get like a little defensive initially, but as soon as you like hold out a bug, he's like, oh hey. Yeah. And like so I got him to crawl out on me after so back up a little bit, I did a fecal test, I quarantined him, and now he's in actually Neptune's old enclosure, which was kind of like
bittersweet
a moment, if I'm being
of course
totally honest. But his fecal came back clear. He passed his quarantine, and I was just keeping him in a separate room in like a temporary enclosure that I have. And so now he's alongside my other chameleons. So I gave him some time to settle into that enclosure, of course, and then offered to cup feed. And I was like, oh, he's like really interested.
And he like came right out, didn't he? Which
I was able to coax him out through cup feeding. And it was like no more than like maybe 5 minutes of handling. And he like didn't get defensive. He like crawled up my shoulder. And like sometimes when you scoop them up, they'll get a little like freaked out. Chill. Aww. And I was like, oh, you have potential. You can be a really good little veiled ambassador.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I'm leaning towards keeping him, but I'm kind of in this weird spot where like I have a lot of babies in the cooker right now. Yes. And so I'm like, do I, and I really only want to stay at like 5 or 6 chameleons. Like that's kind of like
take it from somebody who got too many too fast, as we have previously discussed. Do what is best for you.
5 or 6 is like kind of my max
sweet spot
currently. Not to say that won't change in the future, but like I've never had that many, but I feel like that's probably where I'd stay.
I'm very much at like 10 to 12 max right now.
Yeah,
like,
and chameleons eat like multiple times a week. You have to deal with like a lot of water and poop. Like they're not like a snake where there's the chore frequency is less often. Like chameleons are like, I think a step down from like maybe a gecko, but a step up from like a snake. Kind of as far as like frequency of like how much you have to do. And so you multiply that 5 or 6 times. And I'm going to have babies. And like
babies are going to be
a lot of them. And then it's like, how many do I want to keep? So if I only have like 5 or 6 kind of spots available, do I want that to be a veil? Do I want it to be this veil? Or do I want to save room for one of the babies from like the second clutch? Or, you know, like I have to be cognizant. So I'm keeping him for now. That's not to say I won't down the line be like, okay, like
it's time.
I'll give him to someone who like will enjoy him. And
honestly, like you're doing the right thing. Like you're taking care of him when he needs it, and you'll assess depending on your situation.
Yeah, and I'll continue to work with him. So like if I do decide to give him a home and not foster him, then he'll be more comfortable with handling, and like he'd only ever had crickets and like he didn't have the proper UVB or supplements. Like he's very much under the correct care. He's like gobbling up dubia roaches. So I think it'll be a really good situation if he does go to a new home.
Absolutely.
But I'm enjoying him for now.
It's the definition of fostering, and you're just deciding whether or not it's going to be a foster fail. Yeah. And that's okay.
To be determined.
You can take that all the time you need to decide that while he's being fostered in a loving, caring home with all the correct proper care.
And it may be like I keep him until like I get a hold back or whatever from a Neptune clutch. Or
and like realistically, like when the babies come, like you're going to be like assessing a lot of like, okay, is this too much? Am I overwhelmed? Am I not? How am I handling this? Like that's you're handling that with perfect grace and fairness.
Thank you. Thank you. So my other update is actually
the
eggs, in that we are now coming up on like, by the time this episode comes out, like we are now in the 6-month mark, and chameleon eggs could be like 6 to 9, sometimes 10 months to incubate. So we are very much in the window of like, could be any day, could be a couple months,
could happen.
Don't know.
Crazy.
So I have 2 clutches for sure that are good. Of those 2 clutches, I have a total of 45 good eggs. Wow. And these are ones that are like white, growing, like they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing.
You know they're rocking and rolling exactly how they're supposed to,
Yes, I probably lost like at least 10 along the way that like were infertile or like something happened in the incubation process. It wasn't like fully developed embryo, no way for us to know. But now I have 45 good ones, and then a matter of days ago, Venus laid a 3rd clutch.
So many.
Of 30 eggs.
So many eggs.
And they look okay.
And also, she did also lay these like the night before, the day before you were going on like a short-lived little trip.
Oh, yeah. My flight departed at 6:30 in the morning, which means I was up at 3:50 a.m.
Yeah.
And literally, I get home from work the night before. Like, I've been in the office all day. I come home. She's in the bin. I was like, great.
You're like, I still have to freaking pack.
Yes, I have to pack. And I'm like, and I need to make sure she's okay.
Of course.
Because if she doesn't finish laying them, then she's going to spend the night in her hole. And then I'm not going to be home.
Right.
In case, like, something happens. And then, like, half the eggs were laid outside the hole, which is, like, bizarre and not normal for her. And then she was like in the hole, and then if they're fertile, then ideally I need to like
lay them out, put them
incubate them, because the ones on top are gonna like dry out because they weren't buried. So I was like great. So I'm like put my phone on a time lapse on a tripod, I'm like packing right, and so anyways,
crazy,
she ended up laying her eggs. It's fine, they're now incubating. It's an additional 30 eggs. We'll see how many, if any, end up being fertile. Honestly, time will tell. They'll either mold or they'll grow, but that would then put me at over 70 eggs.
If that's so many
anyone's
babies.
Keeping track. So
that is so many babies. Those so many eggs.
Off of one mating.
Which is crazy.
Not even like
crazy.
One time where they did it like multiple times. Like one
single time. Yeah.
Did the deed. I now have 70 eggs. 75 eggs specifically.
Specifically, yeah.
But I'm like, and she could lay a fourth clutch.
How much time elapsed between like the first clutch, the second clutch, and the
First clutch
third?
was early September.
Okay.
Second clutch was early November.
Okay.
And then third clutch was early February.
Wow. So pretty much like
2 months.
About like 2 months in between. Interesting.
Yep. And it's not uncommon for panthers, so they retain the sperm is what's happening.
Right.
And sometimes they'll lay one clutch and be good. Most often it seems to be like 2 or 3 clutches. One of our breeder friends, Ready Rainforest, was telling me that they've had a female lay 5 clutches off of one.
Wow.
Like one mating, one pairing. And they were saying the most they've heard documented, I forget, was either 7 or 8 clutches. Dang. Again, off of like one mating.
Dang.
So Neptune went out with a bang.
Absolutely he did.
He's
Proud
like,
of that boy.
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right.
I'm going to do it right. I'm going to give you 75 babies, Mom.
Like, okay.
All right. No, that's
So
wild.
if you're interested in one, join the wait list on my website, neptunethechameleon.com. There's an application, and that puts you on the wait list. I will not be reaching out until they're like hatching.
Right.
Because I have 45 good eggs, but that doesn't mean I'll have 45 babies.
I mean, it all depends. Like, there's so
Mother
many...
Nature has to
take her
run
course.
its course. And, like, you don't know if, like, one is born with, like, 2 heads or its organs outside its body. Or, like,
you never know.
You literally don't know. And even if they hatch, like, this is why it's not recommended to deal with hatchlings, because there's just, like, so many things that can go wrong, even if you do it right. So we will see how many end up making it, but that's where we're at.
Well, it's been a journey, and I can't wait to go over and see all the babies. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna be a little auntie.
I'm gonna be the coolest auntie. I can't wait.
You and my mom are probably gonna be the first to like get it's happening.
I know. I'm gonna freak out. I can't wait to see like the egg pot, like the egg hatching videos. Like,
you're gonna have to come over just so you can see them.
I will be there.
On my way.
Literally, I can't wait. I just want to hold a teeny tiny brand newborn little chameleon.
They're the size of your finger.
So tiny little nuggets. I can't wait.
I feel my heart rate has literally gone faster while sitting here thinking about it.
If I was the one responsible for their care, my heart rate would also be raising, but I'm not.
No, so you're the fun auntie.
I just get to show up and play with baby chameleons.
Yeah. Also, just a quick plug. We've got some expos coming up because what I'm thinking about is like, what do I do if they start hatching while we're like at these expos?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Currently, my plan is Logan, and we need to discuss this.
We'll be discussing this after we get off the pod.
Of like, okay, Logan, here's what I need. Here's what I need you to do.
Frankly, I don't know if I trust him with that responsibility.
No, so the good thing is that the eggs will start sweating and shrink when they are literally about to hatch.
You'll know. Like,
so if they start doing that, then I'm going to have to like
pull
in Uncle Logan to like come and help. But in theory, because we won't be gone for more than like a couple of days for each of these expos, but it will give you guys more information probably in like the next episode or two about those. But
coming up real soon.
It is in my brain though.
Oh, I know.
Like, what if I have to leave?
Trust me,
and what do I do?
March is going to be crazy. So we're going to be real busy going to all the expos.
But I'm not the only one with updates. You have an update for the pod.
I do, and this one's really weird.
Also, the timing of this, because we like literally talked about it very briefly in the last episode.
I know. So, okay. So, yeah, I think in the last episode we kind of talked about just very briefly, but Charlie, so he is my leopard gecko. He is over 15 years old. I obviously don't know like his exact birth date, hatch date, or anything like that, but this year he will be 16. So he is getting significantly older. Yeah. Which is very sweet because I got him when I was 16 and now he's almost 16. So it's like very special.
Yes.
So anyway, something that happened about 2 years ago was that I noticed that his balls were real swollen. His little hemipene bulge that all the boy geckos have were like, I had noticed it and was like, that feels weird. And then I kept an eye on it and they just got really big. And I was like, that's not normal. That can't be normal. So I like sent a picture. I mean,
they're already big to begin with, so they gotta be like real big for you to be like something's not right.
Well, and what's hilarious is like what I actually was like gauging it off of was he has a little spot on his ball.
I feel like Charlie's like, Mom, don't tell the internet.
Don't talk about my balls on the internet. But he has like a little, leopard geckos have their spots, and he has a spot that is on one of his balls, on the right ball. So it started, the spot was getting bigger, and I was like, okay, that tells me that it's like growing whatever's in there. And so I got nervous about it. So I like texted my vet, sent her a picture. And she was like, yeah, it looks like impacted hemipenes. That can happen as they get older. And essentially what she's told me is that she says it's really common. It happens a lot. She actually sent me a video of it happening to a horse. So it can happen to like a lot of different animals apparently, which is crazy.
I did not need to know that. I know. Because now I'm picturing horse balls, and it's just like
weird. So weird.
Do not Google that.
No,
okay.
nobody Google it. But so anyway, so what happens is they get like a buildup as they get, so it can happen due to improper husbandry. That's 100% can be a cause of it for sure. But what she sees most often is as these geckos get older, they, I guess, either have a harder time or kind of like forget to like clean themselves as often as they used to. And so that it's called smegma, which is really gross.
Which is the word you heard in the last episode.
Yeah, super gross. But it kind of causes a buildup. And so that happened about 2 years ago. And I took him into her, and she actually had to use like a little bit of euthanasia, put him under, and, really brief like sedation, and then pop it out. And the reason she did that, which coincides with our main topic for the day, which is tail dropping. So we'll be talking about that in just a second. But the reason she sedated him the first time this happened was because he's 16 years old and has never dropped his tail. And I am very proud of that. Mm-hmm. I do not ever want him to drop his tail. I mean, I have had this gecko half of my life, and I love his tail. It is beautiful, and I would literally cry if he ever dropped it.
Is also a defining characteristic of a leopard gecko.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so it's just, because she wasn't sure how he would like handle kind of the procedure of like popping the hemipenes out, she didn't want to risk him dropping his tail. So she sedated him. So this time, so basically it happened again. I started noticing it about like a few months ago, and I was kind of like, all right, I think this is happening again. I think this is probably going to be like an every other year occurrence where we're going to have to like take Charlie to the vet to pop out his smegma. So
good times.
Yeah. So super weird. But I took him in, and this time, so I dropped him off at like, the drop off time was supposed to be like before 8:30 a.m. So I dropped him off like around 8 a.m. and she was like, we'll try to get it out without sedation. But if we do have to sedate him, like, I'll let you know, whatever. So I leave, and I'm driving home, and I almost get home, and she gives me a call, and she's like cracking up. She was like, it came right out. It came right out. She was like, I didn't even have to do anything. It just it popped right out.
That's awesome.
So good news. He didn't have to get sedated, because that is something as they get older, it's kind of like with older people and surgeries, like you just want to be careful. You don't.
Oh yeah, I mean reptile surgery period is like a risky thing, but like elderly reptiles and another thing. Yeah.
So like you don't want to have to sedate them if you can avoid it. So it was like very good news that he didn't have to be sedated. I was really excited about that, and he is doing great and is back home in his little enclosure, and he's happy as a clam with a little bit.
He's a little relief,
a little lighter.
Yeah, I believe it. Also, you texted me that our vet actually has a podcast shirt. Mm-hmm. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, it was so cute. She said that she gets lots of compliments, and she even said that like a barista or something basically like complimented her and said that they listened to the pod. So that was so cool.
Isn't that so cool?
I was so excited when she told me that. It made my whole day. It was amazing.
I was like, go Charlie, but like, yay for the podcast. That's very exciting.
I know.
Yeah. So thank you for all the amazing reptile vets out there that are able to like do stuff like this for us.
It's amazing. And I told her because she's wonderful and always tries it. She's like, if you want to try and mess with it, I'm like, no, absolutely not.
No, she also offered that with like eye drops and whatever. I'm like, no,
we're good. Like, and there are some people that might want to do that to themselves.
No, absolutely. I'm just not that person.
No, I'm not going to take the risk. If Charlie dropped his tail and it was my fault, I would never forgive myself.
Leave it to the professionals. No, that is so. I will pay you whatever. Take care of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, literally. That's not something I ever want to do. So.
No. So we had mentioned this, I forget what episode, of like tail dropping. Yeah. And then we were like, we should do an episode on that.
Immediately jotted that down in our little list. And we're like,
here we are. Yeah. We are doing it. So tail dropping, you kind of alluded to it in reference to Charlie's whole thing. But tail dropping is kind of like a strange phenomenon.
Yes.
And actually something that like non-reptile people I feel like are
I was going to say
fairly familiar with.
Yes, it's one of like the first things that I feel like a lot of people who like, if you're in the reptile community or if you're not, if you keep reptiles or if you don't, most people know that a lot of lizards can drop their tail. I feel like that's pretty common knowledge.
Yeah, I think what's more common is like fact that they can regrow.
Yes.
It not so much like how
Yes.
or why it gets
Yes.
dropped or like what species can or
Yes.
can't, but the fact that like they're able to regenerate their tails
And
like
I
a thing.
do think there's a weird assumption that like any species can do that.
Yeah.
And so that is
We're
not
here to bust some myths.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So maybe we can start with like why this happens. And I think that will help set the scene for like all the other pieces.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did a little bit of sciencey, nerdy research. And I'm very excited because I think I don't even know some of this stuff either.
I didn't. No, because like we can obviously speak to our experiences and stuff, but it's fun. Like you've definitely done some research prior to episodes and like actually, and it's been fantastic.
Honestly, we learn a lot just doing this podcast. So it's really fun.
I just like to be on this side of the seat because I'm like, this is fun.
Agreed.
So it is a defense response, which I think is pretty common knowledge, but we can talk into it. So what will happen is most commonly with geckos, so we'll use them as an example, if they're feeling threatened, a way to protect themselves would be to drop their tail
and run.
And when we say drop the tail will actually like separate from the body, and there will still be blood flow in the tail, so it ends up still wiggling.
Yeah.
And the idea from like an evolution standpoint, whatever, is that the predator will go after the tail
because it's moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that gives the gecko the opportunity to
get away.
Run away.
Yeah.
And that's why it's considered a defense mechanism. However, this happens in captivity.
Yes.
Where there are not predators. There's just a loud strike of thunder or a loud bang or just like being transported. And all these things can also cause a crested gecko, most commonly, to drop their tail.
The word that I always use when it happens in captivity, because obviously it's a defense mechanism, but it's not something that happens because they're actually in danger for their lives when they're in captivity.
Right.
I just
There's
always
no true
say,
threat. Yeah.
No, it's like, but to them, they just got spooked.
Yes.
Like they got spooked, they got freaked out, they panicked, and they dropped a body part.
Seems like a very reasonable response.
Super normal, guys.
Can we just give some love to Pangea Reptile?
I mean, always. My geckos cannot get enough of their gecko food. Mine are actually pretty picky sometimes, but mine have never turned down the watermelon and fig and insects flavors. Pangea has so many flavors that even your pickiest gecko will find one they love.
And quick shout out because it's been such a fun project to work on my chameleon kits with Pangea. We've been able to provide amazing homes for hundreds of chameleons. With everything you need bundled into one easy kit, it's your one-stop shop for all your chameleon needs.
And if that's not enough, we're always shopping their cork bark and feeding ledges too. You can find everything you need at PangeaReptile.com. Hey reptile girlies! By now you've heard us talk all about Scratches, the social app that helps exotic pet owners like us find their people.
You can add photos of you and all your scaly babies, set your filter to reptiles, and start scrolling through your local pet parents who get it. Think of Scratches as your way of avoiding the ever-looming "so do you have any pets?" question. Whether you're looking for friendship, romance, or someone who can pet sit your critters, your community is just a new match away.
Download Scratches today and start connecting with reptile keepers in your area. Available on iOS and Android.
Before we dive into like how this happens, I think it'd be fun to go into like our story times and then we can get a little sciencey, nerdy. Yeah. So do you want to share yours?
So I've actually only ever had this happen one time, and it was pretty deep into my reptile keeping journey. It was only about like 2 years ago that this happened, and it happened to Monkey, my crested gecko, and this is very common with crested geckos. They are,
I would say, the most common species, at least the one that's like most heard of for sure.
100%. And so it happened with Monkey. What it was so funny, it happened when I was moving, which makes sense because when you're moving, there's like a lot of situations that could happen to like spook your animal. Like that's very normal. But it happened like a week and a half after we moved, which was super weird.
It's not the first time Monkey had moved. Like he had moved multiple times
with no issues. He had like, it was, and I don't even know what actually spooked him, because one morning I like opened his enclosure, and I think at that point, I think he was actually, I can't remember if I think he was in a tub because I was still currently setting up his new enclosure and getting that done. So like in the process of moving, I was putting them in the new ones. So he was in a tub. So I like remember I took the lid off to like mist him down for the day. And I looked in and I just see his tail sitting on the bottom in the substrate. And I was like, what happened? There hasn't even been a loud noise.
Right.
Like, what? We've been here for like 5 minutes. What is going on? Like, it was so bizarre. And I had obviously like checked on them multiple times since the actual like moving date.
Yeah.
Because I could have understood if it had happened when like the movers were in there or like we were, moving the shelves around.
Yeah.
Like there were definitely a lot of loud noises during like the day of moving, because the day of moving, I set up my big garage shelves, like those clink and clang, like those were really loud.
Yeah. And like actually being transported. But that's the thing with like tail dropping is while there can be some very
obvious,
logical, practical reasons for a reptile to drop their tail, there's also just like, it happens.
Literally just like no reason.
And there's not really a whole lot you can do to prevent it.
No.
It just like sometimes happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was so weird. And so I actually, unfortunately, I'm still sad about this. I didn't get to see it when it was like moving.
Yeah.
At all. And so it was already like, the blood flow had stopped at that point. So it must have happened at night, which is again even weirder because it was like if there was a loud noise, like I would have been woken up.
I wonder if he like startled himself or something.
I genuinely think that that's what it was. I don't know, but he like spooked himself. So I immediately picked up his tail, made sure that he was okay, got him, I immediately, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the episode, but I immediately took his substrate out, put him on something clean to make sure that it would heal properly, got him taken care of, picked up the tail, and immediately made a TikTok video about it.
Of course.
That got like 2 million views because I was standing there holding a tail.
I love it. And you preserved it too.
I did. I put it in isopropyl alcohol and stuff, which I know if you're somebody that preserves things, I know that's like not the most ideal way to preserve them, but it's what I had access to. So that's what I did. So I still have it. And he sits his little tail, and Monkey has since passed. Another kind of freak accident. I don't really know what happened. He was just gone one morning, but essentially his little tail sits next to Barney, and Barney's like little memorabilia.
Yeah.
Memorial. Yeah. Yeah.
That all works.
Whatever. One of those. So I've got like a little shelf and it's got that. And so I've still got his tail, which feels really special.
Yeah.
So
it's a little creepy, but it's
a little creepy, but I like the creepy things.
No, it's good.
Speaking of creepy things, I also have Charlie's smegma from the other day.
Yeah.
I have both of them. So
if it's collection.
If it's not clear that I like the weird stuff, I like the weird stuff.
No, I'm all for it. I definitely like was tempted to keep like a little piece of shed, but chameleon shed in like flakes, so it's
not as pretty as like a snake shed.
No, but I do love the dorsal spikes.
Yes, the dorsal spikes are so cool. Have you ever seen the iguana dorsal spikes?
Oh, yeah.
Those are the coolest because they're so big. Oh,
yes.
I love those.
Yes. So you have your story. I have my story, which isn't even my crested gecko. So my crested gecko, Pluto, still has his tail, and I've had him for six years. Yeah, and he still has his tail.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think Monkey kept his for like, I had him for at least 5 years. He was like 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is so random.
But then babies will drop them.
Yeah.
Oh, they're called frog butts.
Yeah.
Wait. For anyone who doesn't know, for crested gecko that doesn't have their tail, it's a frog butt. And some people prefer the look of the frog butt, and other people like the tail look, and some people don't care. Some people
prefer the look, but some people also just prefer the fact that it's gone and they don't have to ever worry about it being gone.
Yeah.
So there's also that factor.
So if you see a crested gecko that doesn't have it,
it just has he has a little frog booty.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
So my story wasn't my crested gecko, but it was actually my mom's crested gecko who was out of town, and I was not her pet sitter, but I was the emergency contact for the pet sitter. Now my mom owns like a plethora of animals, so like she had emergency contacts for like
each one.
And I was the emergency contact for her crested gecko, rightfully so. So I didn't know that I was listed as her emergency contact.
I forget that you didn't know. That's an
added. So I got a phone call from an unknown number, and I very much like don't answer unknown numbers because my thought process is if it's important, you'll call back or leave a voicemail.
Or send a text, yeah.
Sure enough, this number calls me back 2 more times. So now I have 3 missed calls from this unknown number.
Okay, spam phone calls don't call 3 times.
Right. In hindsight, she probably should have just left a voicemail, but it's fine. So I call back, or I pick up the 4th time. One of the times we end up on the phone, and she's freaking out because she was taking care of my mom's crested gecko, which was very much just like spray down, or I think she had an automatic missing system, and then just like feed the gecko. Yeah. So she was feeding it, and the crested gecko, whose name was Miko, got out. And then when it like splatted on to the floor, which is like very safe for a crested gecko, very much what they're built for that.
They do that.
Yes. So on the floor, and then she went after it to like
pick him
up, and it dropped its tail. But she thought, as the pet keeper, that she did something wrong. So she was freaking out.
Rightfully so. It can be so scary if you don't know what you're looking at.
Thinking that she broke my mom's gecko. Now keep in mind, this tail is wiggling because it's fresh. So imagine this.
And this is a gross part, but how do I explain this? When the tail detaches, there are these little spike tentacles.
It kind of looks like an alien.
It looks a little bit like miniature little alien tentacles, and those also move. So it is really creepy looking at first, especially when it's moving.
Out. So I have to like talk her down.
Yeah.
And very much assure her that this is normal, that this is totally fine. Okay. And my mom was in an area where like she could not be contacted. So I'm like, my mom will be fine. Because when my mom got the crested gecko, I was like, are you going to be okay if it loses its tail? Because my mom likes things, as a lot of people do, like a certain way. Yeah. And like some people I can imagine would be sad if their gecko lost its tail.
I would literally sob for days if Charlie lost his tail.
Right. Because you like the look with the tail. So if it doesn't, then like you have to be okay with that. And we'll get into this, but crested geckos don't grow their tail back. So like once they're a frog butt, that's frog butt for life. And you have to be okay with like the look of that, right? And some people are and some people aren't. Anyway, so like my mom knew all this. She's like, yeah, I'm cool with it, whatever. So I already knew my mom was cool with it. So I told the girl, I was like, look, it's fine.
We've discussed the possibility of this happening. It's all good. You are
like
off
very
the
much
hook.
Like the nurse that was like, talking about like
calming her down. Yeah.
Anyway, so like I talked her through it and whatever. So like that was my experience, and like, now he lives this cute little gecko life like with his cute little frog butt, and he's good. But that was the whole thing, and I was like somewhat involved in that, I like coached her through it. So my Cresty still has his, but it was an experience.
I honestly once Monkey lost it because Monkey was a total psycho. If you've seen any of my old content,
active gecko,
very active psycho. He was literally, I used to make TikTok videos about it all the time, but he would wait until I walked by and fling himself at the front door of his enclosure just to scare me. Like, it was intentional. You can't convince me that it wasn't intentional. He was
very active and would definitely like splat from like one wall to the other wall, up, down, quickly, whatever. Like he was very active.
He was a crazy little dude, and in the best way. I mean, I loved it, but he was just a little bit nuts. And so it honestly was surprising to me that he had made it 5 years without dropping his tail. So once he did drop it, I was like, thank God I don't have to worry about that. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm good.
I've definitely had nightmares of Pluto dropping his tail. Aww. And it was like very much early on. Yeah. Now I've had him for so long, and he's still, I mean, you never say never, but I'm like, all right, well, you're good. So like,
no, but it's like, it can be a traumatic situation of like, what have I done? What happened? If you're not like aware of how normal it can be. I was very much like, which is why when I made the TikTok video, I was like, look at this, it's crazy. Because for me, it was like, thank God, now I don't have to worry about you doing that anymore, because it's about time. You've lived for 5+ years without dropping it. I'm impressed.
So let's like discuss then how this happens. Then we can talk about which species this happens to, because it's not just crested geckos. No. And some do regrow their tails, some don't, all that, because I think this is just fun. So the technical word is tail autonomy. How do you say this?
Autonomy. Autonomy.
But there's no N. Autonomy? Autonomy? Maybe it's autonomy?
I don't know.
It's self-amputation is what it is, though, which comes from the Greek word self or server. So that was kind of interesting. So the geckos specifically, or any reptile species that like has this ability to like release their tail has what's called a fracture plane,
Yes.
which is that like spot where
This
the
literally
tail
makes perfect sense. I've never heard the science of this, but this makes perfect sense because that's what I was talking about with like the little tentacle things.
Yes.
Because they look like little cones and they perfectly.
So the muscles pull away instead
Yes.
of knitting
Yes.
together. And so it's called a fracture plane. And like that's the spot in which the tail will
that makes so much sense.
release, which is known as a reflex muscle spasm.
Wow.
And because of this, there's no blood loss.
Yeah.
And so like there are little blood vessels, but within minutes they'll like close up. So like minimal risk for the animal.
For anybody, just be prepared. There will not be blood.
Yeah, because that wouldn't be a very good survival thing if you then were just like
bleeding out and like
losing a lot of blood.
You're literally leaving like blood crumbs.
No, definitely not. So that's good. Okay, so then it's initially a tail skeleton, and then when it does regrow, it is replaced with cartilage.
Yes.
Which is different than the original anatomy of the tail, which results in usually a shorter or different colored tail.
Different colored, shorter, thicker, weirdly shaped.
Because it's not a skeleton, it is cartilage.
There's no bone in there. So just know they don't regrow the bone at all. The bone is gone.
Yes.
Tailbone is gone.
Yes.
But it does change the structure of the tail.
Yeah. So that's kind of like...
That's so fascinating.
What happens.
I love that it's called self-amputation.
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't need that anymore.
Bye. Yeah. So that's kind of like the science behind it, is like it's literally built that way so that the muscles can release versus it being intertwined.
That's so funny because that makes perfect sense of like how I visualize it in my head too. Like just at the base of the tail right there, the little tentacle kind of things are there. That's so interesting.
And what's interesting is like their patterns like don't indicate where the break would be. Like it's not like it's like a different color or like the spots stop or like whatever. It's just kind of like a
weird line.
And like internally they know, but externally you wouldn't be able to see like that's where it would break off.
So interesting.
So that's what I have for like the how it happens.
Yeah.
But then I thought it'd be fun to like who it happens to.
Yes.
Of different species.
Because some of them will surprise you.
So crested geckos, number one, right? I feel like is the most common in the pet trade for species. Some other ones in my research was a white-headed dwarf gecko. Do you even know what that is?
I don't even know what that is.
I didn't know what it was. It's in Africa.
Oh.
A cute little gecko. But it had its like tail missing and it had like a list of all these different like very native wild type species.
Oh, like wildlife versus like
in the pet trade.
Yeah. The one like I would also say gargoyle geckos, that happens too. And also can I throw my shocking one out there that might surprise you? So, Voldemort, my legless lizard, the Sheltopusic, they can drop their tail.
I have it on here.
Oh, good. Okay.
I have two different ones. A San Diegan legless lizard and then the unbanded Delma legless lizard.
Oh, I don't know that one either.
Were both legless lizards and it had a picture and I was like,
So legless lizards, there's all kinds of types of legless lizards. The one that I have is a European legless lizard or a Sheltopusic, and those specifically, any type of legless lizards. Like I've heard of people in Florida who have them in the wilds there, and they refer to them as glass lizards because they are known to break. And so they break like glass, and that means that they just drop their tail.
Yep.
So super crazy.
Yep. Okay, so we've got cresties, we've got gargoyles. Are there any like pet trade?
Leopard geckos, African fat-tailed geckos. I would say those are the ones that those two species do grow them back, whereas gargoyle geckos and chihuahua geckos,
crested geckos.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Those ones do not grow back, whereas
chihuahuas drop their tails too.
I could be wrong. I'm actually not sure now that I'm thinking about it because chihuahuas' tails are prehensile, but so are cresties. So I've never seen a chihuahua with no tail. But I feel like they probably can drop them.
To be determined.
Let us know. I'm curious because I have a chihuahua and I would love to know if he can drop his. But leopard geckos and African fat-tailed geckos are very well known for that happening.
Yep.
And they are the ones that I would say they grow them back, but they don't look anything remotely the same at all. And so those are the ones that it's like, if you see them, you're like, that is a regrown tail, I can tell.
Some other species are skinks. In fact, skinks will eat their tail for stored fat.
That's
see that one.
new information.
Like wild skinks, right? So the tail has fat in it. So the idea is that the predator will not only eat that as like a distraction, but then will eat that and then in theory be like, I'm good. I don't need to go seek out. So some skinks will eat their tails if they're like literally starving because it's a source of fat and they can just regenerate it and regrow
Fascinating. I did not know that.
A desert night lizard was another one. Okay. The southern and northern alligator lizards will drop their tails. Western red-tailed skink, the desert banded gecko, a skeleton skink, a ground skink, and then of course those legless lizards I had mentioned.
Wow. That's
will
crazy.
All drop their tails.
There's a lot, man. There's a lot that will, but there's also a lot that won't.
So. We also have bearded dragons.
Yeah. Wait, really?
They will regrow their tails. Iguanas, salamanders, and anoles.
Hold on. I'm shocked about the beardies.
Unless the internet was wrong.
So the reason that I'm shocked about this is because I actually had written down beardies as ones that can't, because I have seen people who have had to have bits of their bearded dragon's tail removed for like necrotic tissue or whatever, which can happen if like their shed gets stuck on the end of their tail or whatever. So
maybe now I'm second guessing it.
Because I know for a fact that when that's happened, I have something stuck in my contact. Sorry guys, that is driving me nuts. I think I got an eyelash in there. Ooh, okay, we good. But the reason I threw that out there is because I know that when people have had beardies with like necrotic tissue on the end, it doesn't grow back. So maybe it only grows back if they actually drop it.
Unclear. Because it was like a list of species that do not grow back. And I had crested geckos, monitors, chameleons, marine iguanas as species that don't grow back. And then ones that do are bearded dragons, iguanas, skinks, salamanders, anoles, and then some gecko species.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Super curious. I didn't know.
Now you're making me nervous. Now someone's going to be like, actually, that's not the case with
if we are not
dragons.
correct on anything, you guys can always tell us. You know that.
Is your eyeball okay?
I don't know. It's like acting really weird. I think I have an eyelash in there or something.
Okay. You let me know if we need to take an eyeball break.
I think I'm okay right now.
The last thing to touch on with this is like if your reptile, leave it open-ended, does drop their tail, like what are your next steps? And the biggest thing is like preventing infection, right?
Yeah. So because when they drop it, it is technically an open wound, right? Like it is open, the flesh is exposed, and it does have to scab over. And so you want to make sure that you get rid of anything that could get stuck to the open wound. So I would say like the most common thing is substrate. Mm-hmm. So what I did when it happened to me was immediately got rid of the substrate. And mine was already in a tub because he had been moving and he was in the process of enclosures and stuff. But I would just go get a tub and use that as a quarantine setup until the wound has officially scabbed over. And then once it's scabbed over, you can move them back into their home with their substrate or whatever. But you want to immediately quarantine. And when I say quarantine, I don't mean removing them from like the other animals, more so putting them in like a hospital setup so that it's sterile and just less risk of infection.
Sterile, that's a better way to think about it, which is similar to a quarantine setup. So I totally see where you're where you're coming from. So that, and then just ensuring you have proper care, right? Making sure that they have their correct supplements, UVB, things like that. That'll help with them if they are having to regenerate the tail or if they're just trying to heal. Yeah. So we just want to make sure that their care is
top notch,
on point.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's it though. I mean, it really is that simple. When it happens, you just kind of get rid of anything that could cause infection and you're good to go. And their bodies know what to do. I mean, they're built for it. Oh yeah. So,
and as far as regrowth, depending on the species, it could take a couple weeks up to a couple of months before the tail fully regenerates. If you see geckos in the wild, that's sometimes why you see like little nibs because they're in the process of regrowing it, which I just think is hilarious because they look so disproportional. And that's something that, this was mentioning is that like sometimes their climbing and balance can be a little off because they don't have their full tail.
That's 100%. When I witnessed Monkey, he would sit in his little tub. I had, cork bark, rounds, and all kinds of stuff for him to hide and climb in. And he was sitting on the top of like a part of his cork bark that like he was kind of teetering back and forth, and I was witnessing him like relearn how to balance. It's funny. And another thing that popped into my head, when they regenerate, so for leopard geckos or African fat-tailed geckos, I have even seen pictures of some. I don't think it happens often, but depending on exactly where and how the tail is severed, because sometimes it'll happen if like babies will bite each other's tails and nip each other's tails. So sometimes the leopard geckos and the African fat-tailed geckos can drop them at a slightly different point. It's not just like the one point. I think they have multiple points maybe. And so I've seen a tail actually regenerate with like two tails.
I gotta look that up.
Yeah. So that's crazy. I don't think that happens very often, but I have seen photos of it before. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And just keep in mind, like, it can take a good chunk of time.
Yes.
It is cartilage at that point.
Be
It is no
patient with
longer
it.
bone.
Yeah.
So it's normal for the coloring to be a little off, the shape to be a little off, but like they'll do their thing, and then just be mindful if it's maybe a species that doesn't grow back, that you just keep things clean for them.
No, it's pretty easy and doable once it happens. It freaks you out at first.
What a weird thing, though, right? And I thoroughly enjoy talking about this because, like, chameleons aren't ones to drop their tails, so it's never something we have to worry about.
I will never forget when I went to college, and my first 2 years of college, I couldn't take Charlie with me because I lived on campus or whatever, and so I had to leave him for the semesters that I wasn't home. I had to leave him in the care of my little brother and my dad. And my little brother at the time was like in middle school. And so he would literally like bring friends over and like kind of take him out from time to time. And I remember yelling at him, being like, if he drops his tail because you and your friends were handling him incorrectly, I will be so pissed off. Like, I just remember being like, you be so careful if you hold
Precious
him.
cargo.
Like, I've always been so protective of Charlie's tail because it's so pretty.
Oh, yeah.
It's so pretty.
And like I said, it is a key characteristic of a leopard gecko.
And I'm just proud that he's made it 16 years.
Come on, Charlie. Hang in there.
I know. He did great. So.
Yep. So you guys have it. That is tail dropping 101. Let us know if you have any experiences or comments. I'm sure there's some great tail dropping stories.
We would love some funny tail dropping stories.
Would love to hear those. Let us know in the comments. I just had another thing that popped into my head. I had a chameleon call earlier today, and it was an hour long, which like...
Oh, that's a long one.
Most of mine are like 30 minutes. Yeah, sometimes 45, but like very rarely do I get like a full hour long call. This lady got a chameleon for her son. He's really, really wanted one. He's like allergic to most pets. So like reptiles like totally work for him. So excited. They got told so much incorrect information, bought all the wrong things. They've had it for 4 days. So I was like, look, I know it sucks, but like forget everything you've like been told. Return everything. Clean slate. Yeah. Here you go.
Oh,
buy my
so
kit.
Frustrating.
Start from scratch. But one of the things that the lady told them, in addition to like a plethora of incorrect information, all of which like is very common incorrect information, but this I hadn't heard before, the Petco PetSmart lady, I forget which one it was, advised them to every single day take everything outside of the enclosure, scrub it all down with like half water, half vinegar, whatever solution, clean solution, and put it all back every single day.
What?
Yeah. You should have seen my face when the lady told me this. I was like, what? Are you kidding me?
Why would you do that?
Yeah, I was like, that's like one of the worst possible things that you could do. And earlier in the call, I guess this chameleon who they thought was a female, it's actually a male. So congratulations, it's a boy. But like, they're like, she wants to come out all the time. Is that like, and we've heard that's like not normal.
Probably because you're cleaning all of her stuff all the time.
And I was like, it's one of two things. Either it's because her enclosure is not set up correctly, or she's just like a chill chameleon. Yeah. And it's probably maybe a mixture of the two. Then she like 30 minutes later tells me that like every day they're taking, I was like, she's
that's
stressed.
Why. She's super stressed out.
I'm like, that's one of the worst things you could do for a reptile. And she had no idea. And I was like, this Petco PetSmart lady is just telling people this. And I was like, you do not need to do that.
No, in fact, that's going to cause a lot of stress.
And I was like, do you not see all of my enclosures? Could you imagine if every single day? I'm doing
that every day? I'm not even doing that every week, lady.
No,
that's
like,
crazy.
That's not a thing. No. I was like, that's so much work for you. It is unnecessary. That's stressful for them.
That makes me wonder, maybe that's what they do at pet stores because it's like a smaller space. So maybe the employees have to like clean. Maybe
Well, they're also getting tons of different animals. So like you would obviously want to like sterilize things between animals, which is common practice to do that.
Maybe that's what she was talking about. And she just assumes that people who keep them as pets have to do that too.
I don't know.
That's crazy.
But like this lady was doing that. And I was like, and you're not going to be able to put them in the exact same position. So like your chameleon has to get reacclimated and you literally do it the next day. Then they're in the enclosure temporarily while it's empty, feeling like I would be very exposed.
Imagine that every day you walk into your bedroom and everything's been rearranged.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd be pissed.
And like reptiles are creatures of habit. Yes. They need to feel safe, and like that's one of the most stressful things you could possibly do for them. And this lady was like, thank you. That makes so much sense because I had told her I had like just gone back from my trip and stuff. And she's like, I was wondering who was like taking out your stuff and cleaning it while you were gone. I was like, literally no one. Because like that's not a thing.
That doesn't happen.
I know. I felt so bad.
Oh, that poor lady.
How much time would you have to spend doing that? And like chameleons specifically, of like how we have to set up our enclosures with like all of your sticks and all your branches, and they're all attached and like connected. I'm like, there's no way. You'd spend hours.
I feel so bad for that lady and even more bad for that poor chameleon.
Oh, I know. I'm like, I'm just so glad she talked to me like on day 4 because I was like I was like, you're going to be fine. Just like, imagine please forget everything you've been told.
Imagine if she did that on like day 45, like of doing that every day.
I know. I was like, no. Reptiles are like very low maintenance. Like,
no, this is crazy.
This is the perk of a reptile. It's like you don't have to.
That you don't do that stuff. Yeah. That's wild.
Mm-hmm. Dang. She also told her the little like 12-inch whatever thing would be good for the first 2 years, and then you would need to upgrade. I'm like, 2 years? What do you mean 2? It'd be dead in 2 years. Like, there's a lot. So that's what the hour was much needed. We covered a lot. She is in good honestly, hands now.
I'm just so glad that she found you.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm so glad that she found you.
The PetSmart lady suggested that she join like the Facebook group. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have Facebook, so she went to TikTok, searched Chameleon Care, and my face popped up all over it. And I was like, yeah it's a small part of the internet, but like I'm here. I'm all over it, you know?
I'm here.
So she found me on TikTok, then booked the call, and like is going to, I think, go with the kit and like just kind of return everything and be good. But I was like,
dang, that is rough.
My face though, when the lady said to take everything out and clean it every single day.
I would have been so shocked. I've
never heard that advice before.
I've heard a lot of crazy things.
That's what I'm saying.
I've heard a lot of wild care information. I've heard it all at this point, and I've never heard that.
That was the first. Yep.
That's wild.
So I just wanted to share with the podcast because I'm sure some of you are going to be like,
what? Imagine if all of us reptile keepers were out here doing that every day.
No, you'd have one.
You would never be able to have multiple.
No, you'd have one singular reptile. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that's a wild ride.
Yep. Good times. Good times. And to round us out, because we always try to have at least one segment that's not just reptiles. This will be a quick one. But this is just like a yay or nay. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can frame it of like, are you the type of girl too?
Ooh, yeah.
But this one's cold plunging. Yay or nay?
Absolutely nay. Never.
That's also a nay for me. But someone was talking to me recently about like how they've been loving their cold plunge and like all this. And I was like, could never.
Here's the thing. So as we've discussed in previous episodes, I am very much in like my wellness journey right now. And I'm doing a lot of, we talked about, I'm doing some red light therapy kind of stuff, which kind of goes like a lot of people who are into the wellness stuff are very into cold plunging because I think there's a lot of like scientific stuff that proves it's like supposed to be really good for your nervous system. It's supposed to be really good for like regulating your like body temps. I don't know. There's all these like really good benefits. It's supposed to be amazing for like mental clarity and like feeling good all day and like all this stuff. Super cool. You can't pay me to get into an ice bucket.
No.
That's wild.
Did you see the video of your cousin in the cold plunge?
Yes,
I watched that.
Yes, I did.
I was like, good luck, girl. She did great.
She did great. But it's just so funny because I was watching her try to be like so nice to her husband while he was like encouraging her. And he was like,
he was like filming it and trying to count down. She's like, count slowly.
Yeah.
And she count slowly so I can like prepare myself. And it was the best. But yeah, cold plunge is not for me. But if you guys are cold plunge girlies or guys, let us know.
Or if you have like more specifics on like the benefits and the wellness of it, I'm definitely curious. I find it really interesting.
I'm more of a hot tub sauna girly than a
like it's a dream
cold plunge, cold shower.
It's like a dream of mine to like have a sauna at the house one day. Like that's a like
those are
life
more common
goal.
Now.
I know, it's becoming way more common. And so like that's like a life dream of like one day when we've made we'll have a sauna in the house. So I understand that some people really love it. I think it's really cool. I don't have that kind of discipline. I really don't.
It's not worth it.
No.
The pros do not outweigh the cons for
us.
Me and you. So that is a nay for me, but let us know. Just a quick little non-reptile-y thing to round us out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope this was interesting. Tail dropping is just like a wacky, weirdo type of thing that reptiles do that I think it's just, and it's not just reptiles. To be clear, there are other animals who do drop their tails as like a defense.
Yeah. But it's just like a fun weirdo thing that happens that I think is fascinating.
I do want to do a future episode on like weird things reptiles do.
Yes, me too.
Because there are a bunch of them,
there's a lot
including
of weird ones.
tail dropping. So we'll reference this video for that video episode, whatever, you know what I mean. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. You can leave us a review. Feel free to follow each of us on social media. You can check me out at Neptune the Chameleon.
Lyssa Lizards everywhere.
The podcast is at The Wild Type Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.
Bye, girlies.